Welcome to Time A Podcast. I'm your host, Sunny. Today we have our speaker from British. One is Will and Hannah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, I'm really happy.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here and to be back in this gorgeous building as well.
Yeah, you guys have been here a few times. With the Myanmar student head and different kind of project. Actually, I know Will from my friends, and they recommend me your book, Hello Stranger. So you are both author writers, but you actually work on different kind of books. Like I know Will have a book about stranger. It's actually really interesting about stranger in the past and different cultures, civilizations, how stranger actually function in our society. Yeah, maybe you can share a little bit more about this book.
Yeah, sure. So, Hello Stranger, which was published around 3 years ago in paperback, 4 years ago in hardback. And it's a book about what I think is maybe a sort of hidden problem. It's a problem we talk around, but we don't often talk about directly. Or a hidden challenge, maybe, not necessarily a problem, a hidden opportunity as well. And that's the fact that there's something like 8 billion people on the planet, and we know, maybe 50 of them.
Yeah.
And we're acquainted with maybe a couple of thousand of them. If you look at people's Facebook friends lists, they tend to peak at 2,000. And beyond that, the other 8 billion people are strangers. And so you hop on the train to Luton for Pingdong, as we did today. Everyone around you is a stranger. You go to the breakfast shop, strangers. You go out of your door, there are strangers. On the news, there are strangers. We're outnumbered, strangers are everywhere. And so I'm really interested in the book in how we get better at relating to strangers. And there's a little bit of political context for that, which is the anti-immigration rhetoric, which is very strong in the UK at the moment. Was when I wrote the book, and it's got worse since then. And the idea that strangers, people who are not like us, present a threat. And obviously, currently in the US as well, that rhetoric has turned into something very, very dark, very, very ugly. So I was concerned with those kind of political questions as well, and how you could think more creatively about the fact that most of the world are strangers. There is fear of strangers, xenophobia, I talk about that in the book, and I think that is kind of natural to us in a way. There's also what's natural to us is curiosity. I think it's it's called a much older word than xenophobia. We're really curious about strangers. And so between the fear and curiosity, how can we manage our responses better? So that's what the book's about. From personal experience, anthropology, philosophy, storytelling, literature, all kinds of other things.
Yeah, there are many aspects and layers. Yeah, because personally I like strangers a lot when I travel, because it means new story, new adventures, and new ideas. So I actually like strangers. Yeah. So that's why I really enjoy your book, and thank you so much for donating the book to the library. So I think if people are interested, they can actually borrow on the library here, and also they can order online. You have English version and also the simplified Chinese. Yeah. I would say it's a little bit difficult to read the English one, because there are so many specific terms and writer's name and philosophy sentences. So I think for me it's easier to read the Chinese one.
Yeah, there's so much in there as well, isn't there? So Will and I were actually based in Greece when you were writing, researching and drafting. And yeah, I think the book was getting longer and longer and longer, because there was just so much kind of interesting kind of content and stories and research that was going into the book. But yeah, then your editor had to take out quite a lot as well.
there's about 3 books worth of material that didn't make the final cut for that book, which one day I'll use for something else. We talk a lot about that. That editorial process is so much part of the work and writing, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So you guys are like staying in different countries, and I know like you are teaching for Myanmar University, maybe physically, but also now you teach online. But how can you share a little bit about like from your home and how you move and how you work together?
Yes, yeah. So originally from the UK, so England. So I was born in Leicester, which is in the middle, and was Norfolk, and then kind of I spent most of my life living in Leicester. Some travelling, so I was in Australia for a while. I was in Ireland. And then studying and working. But then Will and I just decided at some point, kind of probably about 10 years ago, wasn't it? Now, 10 years ago, that we wanted to travel a bit more and I suppose have more adventures.
Okay.
Meet different people and just kind of experience sort of life in a different way. I mean, you'd kind of travelled quite a lot as well, haven't you? Anyway, and we decided. Well, you'd been to Myanmar previously. Teaching at Parami University or Parami Institute of Continued Learning or Continued Education.
Just Parami Institute.
Parami Institute at the time, so there's been a few different kind of iterations. So Will was on the faculty. What year was it?
So that would have been 2017. So the institute started up. There was a research chemist who had his Burmese, and he had a PhD from Yale, and he decided he was going to go back and teach, set up a liberal arts university in Myanmar. So this was the first laying the groundwork, the institute was laying the groundwork for that. There's a background which is related to Hello Stranger, the other theme in the book. I had recently been bereaved, so my partner of 13 years died in breast cancer and Ellie. And I didn't know what to do with myself, and one thing Ellie said before she died is, maybe you should go away. That's what you do, and that will help. So I saw this job in Myanmar, went to Myanmar, worked for 6 months at this institute. It was all very formative, very new. I'd never been to Myanmar before, didn't speak Burmese at the time. And then came back to the UK, we got together.
So I had just finished my PhD, and I think I didn't really want to be just working in higher education in the UK. So we have a lot of friends that work in higher education universities, and none of them are having a very good time. So the kind of conditions are not that great, kind of quite stressful. Lots of funding cuts, always threats of redundancies and restructuring, all of that kind of stuff, and just nobody seemed very happy. And I thought, well, I have this PhD, I'm interested in writing, so that was my PhD, but really sort of felt that actually, kind of I'd been very rooted in Leicester for years at this point as well, after my previous travels, and just thought it was time for a change. So Will and I sort of got our heads together and we thought, let's do something interesting. So then we decided actually to go back to Myanmar. So we'd formed Wind and Bones as an informal kind of organisation, and decided that we wanted to do work that was around writing, storytelling and social change. And so we'd run some workshops and events with refugees and asylum seekers in Leicester, which was where we both were at the time. We also popped over briefly to Bulgaria and did a project there. But then we were thinking, actually, longer term, let's let's go somewhere else and kind of see what happens. So yes, so we decided to write to John Moyton at Paramount and sort of see if he was interested in having writers in residence. And he got straight back to us and he said, yes, this is a great idea, I'd love to have you. And I'd never been to Myanmar, so I'd only heard from sort of Will's experience when he was there, and just thought, this sounds like a really interesting place. And there is quite a lot of history there in terms of the colonial history of the British being there, but something at school that we never really learned about. And I just thought I'd quite like to go and sort of and see really for myself, kind of, and meet some of Will's friends as well that he'd already made. So off we went to Myanmar. So we were there together for
9 months.
about 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so that we were running community-based writing and storytelling.
That was
projects.
before the Civil War.
So before the coup.
Before the coup.
Oh,
Yes, yeah, so before the military coup.
okay.
So we were running writing workshops for, it was kind of a mix actually, so lots of Burmese people. So we were running the classes in English, but Burmese, and then a mix of fellow foreigners and immigrants who were there doing various jobs, so some working for NGOs, some teachers, some doctors, and then Myanmar people who were ex-political prisoners, community journalists, people that were just interested in writing and storytelling and social change.
Sounds like you're trying to create understanding for different group of people and try to make people respect and understand each other more, and maybe there'll be more harmony. Right?
It was really lovely actually, to sort of use writing as a tool and stories, and just to have this real kind of mix of people. So Myanmar is a very diverse country, lots of different ethnic groups, lots of different religions, and to kind of bring all of these people together with fellow immigrants and sharing stories and just really kind of connecting. It was really, really, really nice. So by the end, sort of at the beginning, people are a little bit shy and kind of a bit nervous to speak, but then by the end of a 6-week course, it was just really lovely because, we'd be going to the bar all together afterwards and, having a drink and eating French fries. And it was just really lovely. Yeah.
Wow.
Also, I think one thing that we're really interested in is the fact that diversity is a fact.
Yeah.
Often it's treated as something that you either support or you don't support, as if it's something that people are conjuring into existence. But I think it's really clear when you get people to tell their stories that diversity is just simply the way of the world. So again, that's the thing we have to deal with, rather than that kind of question, is diversity a thing or not? It's kind of like saying, archery is a good thing, or is spinach a good thing? I mean, it's just a thing that exists, so those weren't good examples. But so how can we kind of deal with it better? And you have to start, therefore, by looking at it, because it's a thing that exists. You can't deal with it without looking at it. So storytelling is really, really powerful.
Yeah.
And one thing we sort of realised, I suppose, before going to Myanmar, you have certain images in your head, images in the Western media. I remember seeing a few years ago, there was somebody who posted a blog post about book covers of Myanmar. And whatever the story is in Myanmar, whoever it's about, the kind of book designers would go for a picture. There's a bridge in Mount Lake, Ube Bridge, which is on sort of long wooden piles, and it's has no hand-held holes on the outside. It's just a wooden bridge that stretches out over the marsh. Amazing kind of looking bridge, being there is kind of interesting. Very photogenic, and a picture of a monk on Ube Bridge. And something like 30% to 50% of books about Myanmar, they just have this photo of Ube Bridge, whether or not it had anything to do with the actual story in the book. So we have these kind of notions of places, Taiwan, or Myanmar, or the UK, that are really quite sort of narrow imaginatively. And I think one of the things we realised so much from the very beginning of our work with refugees and asylum seekers, but also Myanmar and now in Taiwan, is how once you get people telling stories, that allows you to really start to pay attention to the astonishing diversity that's there, and it's a fact on the ground, an unarguable fact. And yeah, once you start seeing that, then you can start thinking about how to build something worth building on that basis.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So after Myanmar, we moved to Greece in part because Will was doing his research for Hello Stranger, and then we also travelled across the border to Bulgaria as well, which is then where we then moved to after Greece, and then we were there for 2.5 years in Bulgaria.
Wow.
So we were actually there during COVID. So I think we arrived 3 months before COVID started. So kind of a tricky experience in some ways. But just to pick up on that thing that Will was kind of saying there about diversity. So one of the projects that we did when we were in Bulgaria was working with women survivors of domestic abuse, which was a project we partnered with an organisation called Improve, who are just brilliant. And that project was funded by the British Embassy. And so we ran a 6-week course with women survivors, sort of teaching them storytelling skills, writing skills, and in the end, so their work was then, so they wrote flash fiction, micro stories, so really short stories, some directly about their experience of being survivors, and some kind of more, what's a good word?
I suppose more sort of just imaginative and creative responses.
Yeah. And then the stories, so we worked with them obviously to write them, and then we helped them with the kind of editorial stuff, and then the stories were matched with artworks by Bulgarian artists, and then there was an exhibition at the National Gallery in Bulgaria, which was just amazing. And it was such a lovely process actually, because at the beginning, lots of these women kind of started the programme and they were just like, I don't have any stories, I'm not very interesting, I don't know what to say, I can't write. And then by the end, they were standing at this exhibition, where there was this opening with politicians and the media, standing really kind of tall, with their stories and this kind of accompanying artwork, and it was just lovely. And so moving. And also, so again, that kind of diversity thing, you might sort of think that in a room like that, all white women or Bulgarian women, all survivors of domestic abuse, might these stories be quite similar, but actually, as Will was saying, there's always diversity, and I think that is something that we really do notice, kind of whoever we work with, that sort of on the surface it might seem that people have similar backgrounds, and so you might assume they have similar experiences, but actually no two people's experiences are exactly the same, so there's always that diversity there. Even in Taiwan recently as well, so some of the workshops we've been running and the kind of community-based events there, we'll set kind of themes on writing, so it might be ghost stories or magical realism or whatever the theme is, but you kind of give people certain prompts and things to talk about or write about, and the diversity of stories that you get is always it's brilliant.
Wow, it's fascinating.
It's really good.
Wow, that's really cool. I like the way that you can move to different places and create something so meaningful, and so creating things with people by stories. And it's really impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. We do really enjoy sort of being in different places and kind of experiencing different cultures, and just because you just learn so much, like different ways of living your life, and different approaches to things and different ideas, and I think that is kind of massively enriching. But it's also nice to, because we don't sort of travel quickly, we kind of don't head to lots of different places very quickly. We sort of kind of root ourselves in a place and look, love to make new connections and new friends. And I think that, it's just really nice.
How many years do you have in Taiwan so far?
So almost 2 years.
So coming up to 2 years in August. And we've just renewed our visas as well, so hopefully another 3 years.
Okay, and I mean, I would like to ask you why you enjoy Taiwan, or what do you feel like this place, in which aspect that help you to feel you can grow something in your work, or I want to know the reason that you feel attracted to this place. Yeah, but I think we should briefly mention about your work, because actually Hannah's work is quite different from what we are talking about. So actually she creates novels, fictions, based on mixing people.
So my first book, In Their Absence, was a collection of short stories and flash fiction that was based on the theme of missing people, so people who have gone missing. So it's an absolutely fascinating topic. So it's actually, that was my PhD research when I was researching at the University of Leicester, where I did my PhD. So I was researching the real life context of people who go missing in the UK and in Ireland. Globally it's a massive issue, so there's lots of political disappearances, lots of refugees and asylum seekers will go missing as they're sort of making really dangerous, hazardous journeys.
It's also a kind of stranger.
Yes, yeah. So for the kind of sake of my research, I had to kind of narrow the field. So I was looking particularly at the UK and Irish context. People go missing for lots of different reasons. So it's kind of considered a spectrum. So at one end you will have people who are forcibly abducted. So that might be children, that might be people who are trafficked into forced sex work, things like that. Then you have people that might deliberately...
it's actually a very huge thing globally, right? The human trafficking and sex abuse, like children, it's actually much more serious than most people can imagine.
It's quite frightening, definitely.
And I heard, people told me it's actually like a very big global company. They are behind the scene and handle a lot of crimes, but we don't know that. I don't know deeply, but I heard about that.
My research didn't take me sort of directly into that area. I wouldn't be able to sort of comment specifically on kind of figures sort of globally and that kind of thing. But I do know that it is an issue in the UK. So there's a number of organisations that are working with missing people and the families of missing people. So there will be police, obviously, social services, then there'll also be voluntary organisations as well that will support families of people who have gone missing. So there are people that choose to go missing, so there might be some kind of event in their lives where they decide that they kind of can't cope or they don't want to be where they are. So it could be like a relationship breakdown or something at work happens and then they decide to go missing, and that might be that they leave their familiar network of people, or it might be that they kill themselves or they move elsewhere. And then you also have a group of people who have gone missing, but they haven't meant to go missing. So if they have quite chaotic lifestyle, so for example, if they have mental health problems or addiction issues, that can kind of contribute to a life where it's difficult for them to kind of keep in touch with their loved ones and their networks, and so those people will drift essentially out of contact and officially be missing because their networks don't know where they are. So it is kind of quite a broad spectrum. So I was looking at all of that kind of real life context, and then I translated that essentially into a collection of short fiction that was based on the theme. So it's a fictionalised collection of stories, but very much rooted in the real life context.
Wow. It's a very special topic.
It is something that just has always preoccupied me, I think. I hate losing things generally, so even keys, Will's quite good at losing keys. But just kind of any items, if I kind of don't know where they are, it's just that it really kind of hooks into my brain, and then obviously if it's an actual person, that's just kind of magnified hugely, and you just think, how can these people go missing, especially in the UK, a place where there's lots of CCTV and we're told that this will keep us safe, but of course it doesn't, and lots of people kind of go missing, and we never know where.
It's kind of research about the very dark side of humans.
Yes, yeah, it can be, yeah. So
one thing also, having read a lot of Anna's work as well over the years, is the themes do sound sort of fairly sort of heavy and fairly dark, but one of the things I think for me that makes Hannah's writing particularly sort of stand out is that there's always a sort of sense of, it's not nihilistic, so there's a sense of the hope and the sort of need for human connection and friendship, and it's very strongly human in that sense, and so they're very lovely stories, and partly for that reason.
So actually your work has some connections.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like stranger and missing people, but it's all like strongly connected to human and human nature connections.
Yeah, I think both of us are kind of really have a real sort of sense of focus on that, don't we? So I'm just doing some final edits for my next collection of stories called On the Bodies of Strangers, which is a short story collection linked by the theme of tattoos. And again, I think there's lots of stories there about just people connecting with each other, maybe in quite difficult circumstances, but forging friendships and community as well. So yes, thank you.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I like the topic. Yeah. Okay, so let's jump back to the question about Taiwan. Okay.
Yes. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I started learning Chinese years ago, Mandarin Chinese, for a book I wrote, which was published in 2015, published by Earnshaw Books in Hong Kong, and it was called 64 Chance Pieces, a Book of Changes. And it was 64 short stories with commentaries based on the I Ching, Book of Changes. And at the time, I saw this as a literary experiment. I was interested in writers like Italo Calvino and the sort of European writers who took a more experimental approach to writing stories, maybe a more playful approach. So I thought maybe I could use the I Ching as a kind of story machine. So I started on this sort of project, thinking it would take a couple of years. It took ages, much longer than that. And I thought I wouldn't need to learn Chinese or Mandarin or classical Chinese, which I also learned. But the more I read, the more I got sucked in. And so I started on this long journey of learning Chinese. That took me in 2015-16 to Central University in China, where I had a visiting post. And then I kind of continued self-learning Chinese, but with this long-standing dissatisfaction with the focus, and it's a hard language. Then we were in Myanmar, and we had to do visa runs every 70 days, which is kind of crazy. So we sometimes go over to Thailand, but then one year it's the water festival in Myanmar, which is not much fun if you're a visitor. It's sort of weeks of people throwing buckets of water at each other, and we just thought, let's get out of the country. So I suggested we came to Taiwan, really on the strength of friends of mine who knew Taiwan, knew China, and just said, we really should go to Taiwan. People have been telling me it is. You'll love it. It's culturally really interesting and have a great time. So we came to Taiwan. We travelled around Hongkong in the anti-clockwise direction. By the time we got to Tainan, we were smitten.
Wow.
So we did go to the Amping, the Kai Tai, the temple in Amping. And we decided, well, what do you do in Taiwan if you don't know what to do? So we're thinking maybe we should move here. So we didn't really know how to uncover the information blocks, but we decided to have a go and ask Mazu should we move to Taiwan. So, and we did a very non-standard, simplified version of using the information blocks. And Mazu laughed at us, we didn't know what that meant. But by that time it was lodged in our heads that we should move to Taiwan at some stage.
To Tainan.
And to Tainan.
Yeah.
Tainan was...
Tainan,
yeah,
really
specific.
Yeah. I think it was just a really interesting place in that it was very historical.
Yes.
And lots of historical buildings, obviously Japanese colonial era buildings, and yes, food. I mean, a very big thing, isn't it? The food in Tainan. And so there was kind of all of that kind of history stuff that was there, the oldest city, but then also it felt really inclusive as well in terms of the diversity. So we went to the National Museum of Taiwan Literature, which is also in Tainan, as you all know, and just the exhibition there about the kind of importance of diverse literature and writing and stories just really kind of chimed with us in the work that we do, individually and as women owners as well. So we just thought, actually, this is a place that we felt would just kind of really, really suit us. And I think we learned so much as well on the first trip here, because I had no idea really what Taiwan would be like, because I'd never visited. I didn't speak any Mandarin or Taiwanese or and growing up in the UK, so I'm almost 40 now, but when I was young and growing up, everything in the UK had a label on it that said made in Taiwan.
Really?
So I was thinking, well, maybe this kind of really industrial place, sort of lots of commerce, but kind of beyond that, I had absolutely no idea. So when we arrived, and there was the stunning mountains and countryside scenery, the lush greenness, the really cute, cities, the coffee shops, and the diversity in terms of indigenous groups here, languages, culture, all of that was just really, really fascinating and something that I had no idea about previously. So when we came here, it just felt so rich, didn't it? And just so interesting. And I think the work that is being done by the various governments and kind of institutions and people here to talk about the diversity that exists and to make people feel, that they are kind of all part of the country, and just felt really important. I think particularly at a time when in the UK there'd just been Brexit, it was very much, lots of xenophobia, us and them, and the kind of the narrative. I know obviously it's not perfect here in Taiwan, and there's issues of course, but it just felt much more positive.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of project that you guys have been doing in Taiwan? For example, I know you just published a new book, and it's really cool. It's a book of 4 languages and stories, collecting different authors' writing. So in Scotland, Gaelic,
Gaelic,
and English and Mandarin, and also Taiwanese.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting mix of culture. And so you can share about this book, also share about what kind of project that you have been doing in Taiwan. Okay, for example, I know you are doing the philosophy salon in the 晚沙艺术中心, and that is so interesting. I also went for once. Yeah, it's a very it's not like very difficult, but it's like very close to life experience, and people can share about their ideas, philosophy, and exchange feelings and ideas. It's a very nice event. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shall we start with the book and then circle round to the salon? So yeah, as we've been saying, we've moved around kind of quite a lot over a number of years. So originally from England, but we moved up to Scotland. So between our time, living in Bulgaria and working in Bulgaria, and then coming to Taiwan, we actually moved to Scotland, and we were living there for 1.5 years. And we set up our company. Originally it was registered in England, but then we had to re-register it in Scotland. So, and we did various projects there. So, but one of the things that we, again, became aware of when we were in Scotland, and I think if you are English and very embedded in kind of more English culture, you might be a little bit ignorant in terms of the culture up in Scotland. And there is a lot of language diversity in Scotland. So there's English that is very widely spoken, but then there's also Gaelic, and there's also Scots as well, and plus many other languages. So that was all really interesting, and we met, so one of our neighbours who became really good friends with us, Ronnie, he spoke in a very kind of broad Scots, so he spoke Scots and English, but then also his accent was very Dundonian, so because we were living in Dundee, and that just kind of made us sort of start thinking about the kind of language diversity really in Scotland, didn't it? And then we moved to Taiwan, and again kind of similar things were happening with the kind of language diversity, and then we went to a conference in Taipei, didn't we?
So one of the things when we first visited Taiwan all those years ago, and as a Mandarin learner, then we came down south, and I realised that 50% I just didn't understand. Why not? Because it's not the same language, it's Taiwanese. And that was really kind of interesting, and the way there's often code switching, so a taxi driver will be chatting and then we'll suddenly switch into Taiwanese through. Or a video I saw of a YouTuber from Chongqing in China who's doing stuff on food here, and she went to a museum to talk to the auntie there. The auntie would just switch between Mandarin and Taiwanese, and the Taiwanese basically she's just like, what's going on? So when we arrived here, we moved into just the South District of Tainan, and realised all the neighbours spoke Taiwanese, and that's what you heard from the street. The man across the street, she saw us. Niveki Doi.
Niveki Doi.
What is it? So we just like, what does this mean? So I started learning Taiwanese, and then we went to this conference in Taipei on language diversity, and there were people talking in Taiwanese and in Hakka and Mandarin. There was translation as well, which is nice, about Taiwanese experiences and indigenous languages in Taiwan as well. But there were also some people from Scotland and Wales talking about the situation in the UK. So that kind of got us thinking.
Yeah, so we had then developed an idea for a project that was sort of drawing together these kind of parallel experiences. So obviously, you know, two countries really far apart, where you wouldn't automatically think, oh yes, I bet there's a lot. These two countries have lots in common. But actually, we were thinking, well, yeah, in terms of all this language stuff and diversity, like there really is. So we had this kind of seed of an idea for a project form. Where we would work with some writers in Taiwan and writers in Scotland, and to really kind of focus in on the different languages sort of within the two countries, and kind of cross-translate them. So we applied for some funding, and so the project was supported by the Scottish Government, Scottish Connections Fund, which was really, really brilliant. So that meant that the writers obviously got paid for their stories, for their translations, and we got paid a little bit as well for our editorial and production, which was nice. But essentially the premise of the book, so it's 4 stories. So 2 originally written in Gaelic by our Scottish writers, and 2 originally written in Taiwanese or Daigi by our Taiwanese writers. And so the Gaelic stories, so written in Gaelic, translated into English, then translated into Mandarin, and then translated from Mandarin into Taiwanese, and then the same other way. So it was a very involved project, very collaborative, and lots of fun. You were also a translator as well.
So I translated the Taiwanese stories directly into English in collaboration with the authors. And so our 2 Taiwanese authors, Kiki and Chu, both have excellent English, so I worked on the draft translation, and then we worked through those together. And I was going to say something else as well. The Taiwanese stories, that's it. They're also presented, so there were 4 stories and 4 versions, but the Taiwanese stories were 2 versions because we wanted to present them both in Handy, so in Hands, in Chinese characters, and in Miyogi, so in realisation. So that was also an additional challenge to do the realised versions and the character versions of the Taiwanese stories. So each story is in 5 versions. All languages, one of them in 2 versions. And the typesetting, we typeset it ourselves, we designed it ourselves, and the typesetting and proofreading.
Sounds like an adventure.
It was wild. We spent actual hours and hours, but it was huge amounts of fun. We just learned so much.
That's true.
Sounds very interesting.
Also,
And then later you have sign, and then I will make this book into the library. So when people, if they want to read, they can borrow from the library.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you. I think as well, so the stories aren't, so they're kind of, we didn't want simple kind of stories. We also wanted stories that were very much kind of rooted in place.
Culture.
And the culture, exactly.
And that has some literary quality as well. So we saw it as original literature rather than a book for learning, which we thought it could also be used as, but we wanted to commission original high quality literature.
Which kind of added to the difficulty in terms of for the translation, but also the fun as well, because there was kind of lots of wrestling with what might this mean, and what could this mean, and how do you translate this really specific exact context in Scotland into a Taiwanese story. So all of that was just really, really fascinating.
But I think it's a nice project that you cooperate with different people, and people work together to come up with all these ideas, and it's a nice cross-culture cooperation.
I think both of us love working together and just in kind of community with lots of other people as well, because I just think you learn so much, and it's just a really nice way of working. So yeah, I mean this in particular, I think was a very kind of collaborative process.
I really like the way William Bones, I mean, you guys are doing. It's really impressive of moving to different places, and it's actually not easy. It actually requires real skills to understand the culture, and you know which part to resonate with another culture, and then you know how to handle the borders, the boundaries. I mean, those are like invisible skills, but it's actually really important. So you can do the work that you are doing right now. So I think it's really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, both of us are just really interested in people and connecting. And I think, as humans, we all make mistakes, don't we, sometimes? And maybe you get, a little bit of the etiquette wrong or, those kind of things. And there are things that can get lost in translation. But it's just lovely kind of just hanging out with people and hearing stories and just kind of learning about everyday things.
Yeah, I mean, as a Taiwanese people, I will be really honored and happy that you guys are doing this with our people and our culture. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
I think also with this moving, we see our journey looks quite geographically confusing, and sometimes friends say, "Where are you now?" Particularly if we've not been in touch for a year or two, but we do see it as building long-term connections and feel that's really important. So my connections with Bulgaria go back to 2012, and that's one of the reasons we ended up working there. But even now we've not been in Bulgaria for a few years. We're working with a Bulgarian writer who writes really interestingly on Roma issues, the Roma people who are very marginalised in Bulgaria. We're working on publishing something with her. We still work very intensively, as you know, with Myanmar, students with Parami, with some students coming in a couple of weeks. I still work full-time at university and works.
It's a very diverse work, very, very diverse.
But we see those kind of connections as ongoing, and our Scottish connections as well, rather than sort of moving on,
Yeah, and it just as well, to pick up on the philosophy salon that you mentioned earlier, that's also just, I think community-based events they're something that we really enjoy because we like to, share our stories and, help people to share their stories and to write and those kind of things as well. But also for us, it's just a really, really lovely way of connecting in with communities sort of where we are. So with the philosophy salon, it's predominantly Taiwanese people who come along to the salon. So we'll deliver it in Mandarin and in English, as you know, when you came along. But then also we do have a group for English speakers, and that will be me, and then lots of foreigners as well who come from all over. And that's just a really nice way of connecting with people, and we've built up connections over the years from lots of our community events, and have made countless friends through that, and are still in touch. As we also do people in Greece and Bulgaria, Myanmar, elsewhere, and I just think that's just a real amazing thing actually that our work allows us to do that. It's really lovely.
It's beautiful. And so like philosophy salon, and I know you also do writing salon, and also your very diverse work, and I saw William Bones have different kind of online workshop from time to time from different authors from different parts of the world, and also you have a new book, so it's very productive. So a lot of things.
Yeah, it has been super busy. I think certainly the Ty Gale book has been the thing that's really kind of kept us as busy over the last sort of 6 months or so.
Wow.
Because we got some additional funding from Creative Scotland, who support arts and cultural work in Scotland, and so we obviously have the book with the stories in written form, but then also we have the stories recorded, so read by the authors and the translators.
Wow.
So there's a QR code in the book that people can then visit. It takes them to a special website, tygale.com, where they can actually then listen to the stories being read, and they can do that for free as well. You don't even need to buy the book. But if you do have the book, and obviously if you're not sure, as I can't, my reading skills aren't good when it comes to the Beweji Taiwanese, but I can hear those read and as I'm looking at the book as well. So yeah, that was another thing that was keeping us busy.
Wow, that's really good. So kind of audio.
Sorry.
I mean, the audio part, you can feel the different languages.
Yeah.
And one of the loveliest things of that was the writers themselves. At long last, after this I think when we said we were doing this translation from Taiwanese and Gaelic project at the beginning, lots of people thought that was really crazy, including some of the writers. We had lots of conversations around that. But at the end, when our Gaelic writers heard their stories being read in Taiwanese, and our Taiwanese writers hearing their stories being read in those gorgeous sort of soft sounds of Gaelic, they were just so delighted. And so that was just the sound element is really kind of, for us, it's the cherry on the cake, if you like.
Yeah, I always ask them to, I would say waiting for Will and Hannah to teach in the library, but because so always really busy and like traveling is super busy, but we will see.
Yeah, definitely next year. So very soon, so we're heading back to the UK, Will for a month, but me for 4 months, because I'll be catching up with my family. It's my mum's birthday and various things like that. But then after Christmas, I'll be back. And then I think we can do something that will be fun here.
Yeah, I think it's really nice. I actually like to writing salon because for me in the past, I know writing salon is a way that people can share their ideas and exchange ideas.
Yes.
So that's something that I was thinking to do. Yeah, but it's really nice that we can do podcast first.
Yes.
Yes. So are there anything that you are working on or the next thing that you want to do in Taiwan? Are there something, new ideas or next goal?
Good question.
Should we talk about some Wind and Bones things first?
Yeah.
Writing projects.
Yeah.
So Wind and Bones wise, we'd love to do more on translation. Taiwan has so many languages, and so it would be fun to extend this to other languages, indigenous languages. So we've been talking about projects around that, just amongst ourselves. We have another project coming up with our friends in the Wuyoi bookstore in the East District. Bookshop.
Where?
In the East District in Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
I was correcting myself to say bookshop there. The British English equivalent. But their bookshop in the East District of Taiwan held all kinds of wonderful events. It's a largely Taiwanese speaking environment, and we're planning to do some workshops during Ghost Month. On ghost stories, so
wow.
Taiwanese language ghost stories, and Taiwan ghost stories are the best ghost stories.
Really?
Wonderful. We've done some work on that already. We've got a week-long intensive writing workshop at the Chinese Literature Department at NCKU coming up, and definitely some more books, and we're just launching a series of small digital-only pamphlets for Wind and Bones shorts, for more experimental pieces of work. And so we've got something coming out from a Scottish poet, an extraordinary poet that takes in climate change, colonialism, geology and everything else. Something from Martina Pekova in Bulgaria on Roma issues. And also we're thinking about other possibilities for more short, creative, short and snappy, non-book length publication projects. Yeah. So those are some of the things we're thinking about.
Yeah. I've also started to write another collection of short stories. It doesn't have a title yet, but it's inspired by my time living in Taiwan and working here. So I'm quite excited about that as well, because I think my previous work has been very rooted in the UK. So even though it's not been necessarily kind of named as, a city, where the stories are taking place, but it does kind of feel very British to me in terms of the kind of environment and the context. Whereas this collection feels very, very rooted in Taiwan.
I see.
So food and temples and this kind of geographical landscape.
Yeah.
So that's been quite fun as well, quite interesting, and definitely a new thing for me.
Okay, wow. I mean, it's really nice to know that you both going to stay longer here, because I think there will be so many more interesting things coming up. Yeah, and I think if people wanted to know more, they just follow the Wind and Bounce fans page, right? You share everything, all the information there.
Yes, so we're on Facebook as Wind and Bones, we're on Instagram, we're also on Blue Sky, and our website is windandbones.com.
Okay.
We've not actually said anything about our name. Maybe might want to explain Wind and Bones' name for people that don't know.
Okay, yeah. So years ago, I stumbled across the Wenqin Diao, so the literary mind and the carving of dragons, the ancient 3rd, 4th century Chinese text on the art of writing. And I was teaching creative writing at the time, and I found this a really illuminating text about how to write. And because we've been interested in writing creatively across and between languages, when we set up Wind and Bones first and formally as a company in Scotland, we wanted a name that reflected a more linguistically diverse, conceptually diverse approach to writing than just seeing it as creative writing as something that happens in English. It's clearly not true, but that's how it is often taken in the UK. So we stole this idea of Wind and Bones from Liu Xiu's Wenqin Diao, and Wind and Bones Fun. So Fun is, in our reading, and we're not scholars of the Wenqin Diao, I've written a little bit, but it's not that much. Fun is the kind of spirit and life that good writing requires, but also that social change requires, and that any worthwhile enterprise needs that kind of spirit and life, that fun. But also you need bone, you need structure and organisation. And think about bones as well, they're kind of well articulated so they can move. So you need that sort of sense of structure and articulation. And if you have both of those, fun and cool, then you have an organisation that works and can function well. You have a human body that works and can function well. You have a piece of literature that works and can function well. So we thought that sort of captures something of those two aspects, the complementary aspects that reflect what we care about in writing, but also what we care about in terms of the projects we run.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah. And I think we're coming to the end of the interview, and I have a question for everybody on this channel. So I want to ask you about your perspective about education. When you look at your life, your career, grow up process, what do you think is the most important part of the education that you receive? And how about you? How you feel about this topic, education? What is the most important thing from your opinion?
questions. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. Two big things, I think. And one is from curiosity. And the teachers who I remember when I was at school, who I loved, were the ones who seemed insatiably curious about the world. And the physics teacher who he would talk about going for a walk, and beautiful story I still remember about a butterfly flapping its wings on the surface of a pond it had fallen into. And it was too far away to rescue, and it was sending out these ripple patterns. And so you went from there and talking about this and these beautiful patterns in nature, and the kind of tragedy as well, this butterfly dying, to talking about wave equations, to I was studying physics at the time, to all the kind of complicated math that we're going to do around physics, the physics of wave equations, and I was absolutely enchanted by that. So curiosity, and also I think, which goes with that, sort of experimentation. The idea that education is also about having a sense of questioning. Well, what happens if I try this? What happens if I do it like this? And I also studied art when I was at school, and had a wonderful art teacher who was infinitely patient. It got me doing sculpture and doing things I never imagined myself doing, like welding big things together. But he had such a sort of sense of, okay, that's interesting. I'm trying this and trying that, and seeing everything as an experiment to see if it worked. And obviously experiments, one of the wonderful things about experiments is they can fail. And so an education that recognises that and sees experimentation as worthwhile, and maybe failing not always as such a big deal, is the kind of education I want to hear about.
Yeah, I think, for me, sort of one of the issues I have with higher education in the UK at the moment is that it's very much sort of universities are marketing to potential students using what their earning potential might be, kind of post degree or post PhD or whatever that might be, and for me, I just think that's a really kind of limited, narrow view, because actually my experience when I went to university, which I didn't expect to go to university, so nobody in my family had gone to university before me, and I just sort of kind of found myself doing it really because I was sort of interested. When I started, so I studied creative writing and English for my undergraduate degree. And actually, I didn't know where I was going to end up. I could have never predicted that I would have been in Myanmar, in Taiwan, in Greece, in Bulgaria, and all of these people, interesting people that I've met, and all of these really interesting projects that I've been involved in. So none of that was planned. But I think going into a degree where I could just read things that I was interested in, has been really kind of life-changing actually, and kind of really sort of opened up the world to me in a way that I could never have anticipated, and that sort of broadness. I think sometimes at school there were times where we had to, you had your set texts and you had to read certain things, and they weren't always that interesting, but at university, sort of having a bit more kind of space within that was really great. So that was where I really discovered short stories as a form of writing. And I read lots of poetry, but short stories for me, I was pulling off the short story collections and, just reading. And one of the writers I really fell in love with was Daphne du Maurier, who has written quite a lot of sort of gothic kind of horror stories. And The Birds was one of those, that was made into a film as well. But it just kind of really stuck with me, and I thought, this is a really incredible form of writing. I want to do this. So then I started to do that, and just loved it, just totally kind of fell in love with it. And that's really kind of broadened broadened out my life and what I'm doing.
Wow. Thanks. Yeah, it's also my very diverse research that all the speakers have very different answer for education. Yeah. Some people say you need to be happy. Some people say curiosity. But there are so many different answers. Yes. So thanks for all the things that you shared today, and also really appreciate that you come from Thailand to here. Yeah. And I hope that we will have more cooperation in the future. And also wish you have good time and more work in Taiwan.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Yes.
It's been an absolute pleasure to chat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really lovely to speak to you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Okay.